This is the Copper Age update, and here are 37 new details that you might have missed. Starting first with our new golem. So the way that you get yourself a copper golem is that you take a block of copper and then a carved pumpkin, you put it over top, and that gets you both a copper golem and a copper chest. Now that copper chest is going to be what the golems will go to as their route. Think of this as their hub. So they'll come back, retrieve any items from here, and then they will sort it to any nearby chests, having a 10 chest limit that they'll search through before they can go and find any chests that have the same item. So if I were to have a chest down that also had grass blocks, we'll see this copper golem walk over and sort the grass block into that chest. Now this one couldn't find the copper block inside of that chest, so it'll search 9 other chests, and then if it ultimately doesn't find it from anywhere, it'll just leave it in an overflow. And then if you didn't want them to be holding the item, you could always go over to them, right click, get the item back. Now, as they're made of copper, you could probably expect that they also have different oxidation states as well. So we don't just have our regular copper golems, we could also get all the different stages. Until eventually, as you see there, they turn into the copper golem statue. But if you don't want that, what you could always do, like any other copper block, is you can use an axe to scrape off the oxidization, get it back to new, and then if you want to keep it that way, use a honeycomb, giving you a whole bunch of options if you want to have different golems walking around your base. And the good thing is that the oxidization state actually has no impact on how the golem reacts. So if you wax them at that state, it's not going to be any different than any other copper golem. And if you want to decorate them even more, what you could always do is if you have an iron golem, then after a while, our iron golems will actually add a flower onto the top of our copper golems, which we can then shear off if we want it back. So once a copper golem fully oxidizes without any honeycomb, it'll turn into a copper golem statue, which we can then mine and pick up to move around like a block. And if you do, you can also interact with it and have it do different poses, much in the same way that we have armor stands work on Bedrock editions. And then, if you want any of these other kinds of statues, what you're going to want to do is you want to get your axe and scrape off some of the oxidization, but not all of it, because then you'll just get yourself a living golem, which isn't a bad thing, but it's maybe not the thing you wanted. Sorry, buddy. And then, these copper golem statues can also give out, with a comparator, different amounts of redstone output, depending on their state. And now, let's talk more about their copper chest that they have. Since we don't just have to get that by spawning in one of our copper golems, we can also get it just by crafting one up. But unfortunately, unlike modded versions which added in copper chests, there's no extra storage inside of these. But they do give you a new color variant to use, 4 of them, in fact. There seems to be kind of a bug where if you were to go and take a regular chest and put it next to any of your more oxidized chests, then it'll always take the oxidization state that's lower. Meaning that if you want to easily scrape off the oxidization, just make yourself a double chest. So if you've been playing Minecraft for a while, you're probably familiar with chest sounds, and you're definitely familiar with how loud they are, which has now been changed. Chest sounds are now going to be lower, and so if you're searching through all your chests in a chest monster like this, it's going to be a lot less annoying for the people around you. Well, we have our copper ingots, that's for sure, but now we can use these to actually craft down into copper nuggets, giving us a new item that we can get by either uncrafting ingots or smelting down copper tools. But we'll get into copper tools a little later. First, let's show off what we can use with these nuggets, since we can now use the help of these to make ourselves new kinds of light sources. So the way that we would do this is that if you take a copper nugget and you put it over top of a coal and stick, then you'll get yourself copper torches, which are functionally no different than our torches. There's no different light level or anything, but they do give us a new green color to look at. And then if you want copper lanterns, we can do the same thing. That's going to be 8 copper nuggets around a copper torch that we can then oxidize and wax to give us 4 new variants, these copper lanterns. You're going to hear about 4 new variants quite a lot. It comes up a lot with copper. But unlike copper bulbs, there's actually no difference in light level between an oxidized one and a regular one. And similar to our iron bars, we now have a new kind of bar that we can build with, that being the copper bars. And the way that we would get this is that if we take our copper ingots and we craft them 6 in a row like so, we get 16 copper bars. And as Observer points out, there's plenty of different cool build hacks that we can use here as well. Particularly having the exposed copper bars next to the regular iron bars really makes it look as if we're having some kind of rusted iron. Speaking of copper bars, let's not forget about the old copper bar, that being the copper lightning rod, which now isn't just the regular lightning rod, but also the 4 different oxidization states. Which now if it gets struck by lightning, if it's not waxed, it's going to remove the oxidization off of this. There used to be a bug in the code where sheep would eat grass at half the amount of efficiency that they normally used to, meaning that your farms became half as efficient because they weren't regrowing their wool. But now that's been fixed, and our sheep farm is finally going to be able to eat the grass and give us back our proper sheep wool. So if you've played Minecraft for a while, you know that this game gets pretty laggy when you have a lot of entities. But But now that should be fixed because there has been an improvement in this update for a mass amount of entity rendering, which makes sense considering that they added in a whole bunch of new entities with our copper golems and copper chests. So now if you see a bunch of entities on screen, you're not going to see as much lag on your end. This one sounds bad, but hear it out. Since now Mojang has removed spawn chunks from the game, which if you were using technical farms back in the day, you know that spawn chunks were chunks that were constantly loaded around the world spawn, where you can make highly efficient farms by just having them always running within the spawn chunks of the server. But now Mojang has said that there's multiple different alternative options to this, including the force load command if you want to have something done on the admin side, or you can use player-made chunk loaders made from ender pearls to do it as well. But because a lot of players never use the spawn chunk functionality in that way in the first place, it'll make the game run a lot better if you didn't plan to use those anyway. And if you want it in survival, just build yourself an ender pearl stasis chamber and you'll be just fine. This new change makes it so that world border parameters no longer carry over to different dimensions, meaning that we could have ourselves a different world border in all three of the dimensions. So if I want a small world border in the nether, I could teleport back. We don't actually see that made here in the overworld. Most of the time we're hitting the F3 key to check our coordinates, but now if you hit F3, you're gonna see that it looks very different. And this is the simplified F3 debug menu. But if you miss some of the old features, now what you could do to edit it is hit F3 and F6, giving you the debug options menu. And if you wanna always show your player position, then your coordinates are going to be player position always. I think this does still work pretty well, especially if you're looking for just having it without having to always check F3 and having that all on your screen. Something you might have missed in one of the minor updates they put in between drops is that now if you kill off a chicken jockey, making sure to always kill the zombie first instead of the chicken, you will get yourself the new Hyper Potions music disc, Lava Chicken. Which is of course a reference to the Minecraft movie song that everyone's a little too used to hearing. The villager part's my favorite. Now, if we go into the controls menu in our options settings, you can set it so that your attack/destroy button, usually your left click, is now set to toggle. Now in the past we would do this for our AFK farms, usually by just making it so that you would hold down your left click and then use F3 and T to get it started. But now we can just have it where we're automatically farming cobblestone without ever having to actually touch the keyboard in any kind of way. And the same can be said for our use/placing blocks as well. Also possible is that now if we go into our controls in the mouse settings, we can invert the mouse's x-axis, meaning that if I'm turning my mouse to the left right now, it's actually going to turn me to the right and vice versa. Which, while this personally is a bit hard for me to use, it could offer up some fun challenges or even just more accessibility options. If we go into options and we see here, we've got ourselves the sprint window. This is how many ticks it'll take before you can hit the W key again after tapping it once and begin sprinting. So as you can see here, I tap it once, tap it twice, and it gives me a more forgiving option for that. But instead, if you didn't want that to happen, you could reduce this down and make it so that you can't double tap with any kind of window and have it happen. I'm gonna go into survival for this one because now if I were to step inside of a nether portal and start typing out a message, it'll actually let me type chat inside of the nether portal. And not just that, but also if I were to go inside of the nether portal, it'll still have my message on the other side. We've got some new armors to see. One that we're going to see first is for our horses, which strangely enough has no crafting recipe, so it's going to have the same loot chance of finding it as an iron horse armor. And once you get it onto your actual horse, you'll see that it gives it 4 armor points compared to the iron horse armor's 5, which when you hear that all said out loud, it actually makes it seem pretty lousy that it's the same loot chance, but it does look pretty cool. This is a change we've been asking for a while, which is that now our dye textures have been changed to have each of them look distinct even without seeing the different colors, which I always think is great for accessibility if you have different kinds of color blindness, but also just gives us more textures to play around with. If you were to go into survival and break down a player head that's been placed down, it'll actually still preserve the player's name, which is a really welcome change of pace considering that normally if you broke it down, you would just get back the regular head, meaning that if you placed it down, you wouldn't be able to get it back. It was always a waste. One of the coolest features for this update is that now we can get ourselves functioning mirrors in Minecraft. Now, how did we actually make this work? Well, it's all thanks to the new mannequin mobs that we can summon in, and we can basically manipulate them the same way that we do with players, even killing them. So in the past, if you used the summon command to bring in a hostile mob on peaceful difficulty, it would summon them for a tick before deleting them. But now if I were to set the difficulty over to peaceful mode and then type in /summon creeper, it'll say monsters cannot be summoned in peaceful difficulty, which isn't exactly the best. I actually think a better workaround would be that they would let you summon in hostile mobs just that one if you use the summon command, because you already have some kind of creative mode admin privileges. But I digress, it doesn't let you do it. As we can see here, we have a great build hack made using the new copper chains. So the way that we craft these up is 2 copper nuggets over a copper ingot, giving us the new copper chain, which I think is one of the best things that we could build with now. That's just very, very fun to use. And because we now have copper chains, that's the reason why our iron chains have been renamed to, well, iron chains. So we've had copper trapdoors for a while, but now if you wanted to go and craft up your copper trapdoors, you're gonna see that because we're now using the 6 ingots to make our copper bars, the way to get these now is just 4 ingots, making it substantially cheaper. One of the most interesting changes to this drop is that now we have ourselves copper tools, which are meant to be a mid-stage between stone and iron tools. And while you can't expect any of these to oxidize, they are actually more enchantable than diamond, but less than gold. And even then, they'll only mine the same blocks that a stone tool would. And it's not just copper tools that we could deck ourselves out with, because we also have copper armor, which we craft the same way as any of our other armor, but it has a higher durability than leather or gold armor to use. The new shelves, which are basically Minecraft's way of now having in vertical slabs, because these can be freestanding and you can place them back to back and get yourself basically freestanding slab blocks. Look at how cool that is. And it's not just that, because we can also store up to 3 items inside of them, making them more robust than just a regular item frame. And it's not just oak shelves that we have as well. We can also craft up a bunch of different shelves for all of our different variants. Every wood type now has a new shelf. So when you power up a shelf, you'll see that we not only get a new texture to use, but we could also have this save our entire hotbar into this shelf orientation. And then, given how we see it here, as soon as I right click, it instantly swaps my hotbar right there. We have hotbar swapping inside of survival. How cool is this? And the way that we craft up these shelves, what you'll do is you'll take your stripped logs of any kind of variant, put 3 along the top, 3 along the bottom, getting you 6 of the shelves. So something that we'll now see in Java Edition are these new end flashes that'll light up the end. And while they don't actually change any kind of light level that we see here on the end island, they do add in a new kind of ambiance that we're seeing in the end. And my favorite theory about these is that they're actually different players killing ender dragons off in the distance. But if you want those turned off, then the same way that we've turned off lightning flashes in the past, you're now going to go into your accessibility settings, and now it's been renamed to hide sky flashes, turn that on, and it won't actually light up the rest of this place. And with that, folks, YouTube thinks that you might like this video, so see if they're right and have a good one, alright?